good morning or good evening, sir, whatever you prefer.
Oh yeah, that's true, dude. I guess it's
Technically, it's
good morning
AM.
for you and good evening for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck, dude. It's been it's
Been a
been a long
minute.
time since we've had a chance to catch up and just riff on what's been going on for the last couple of weeks. I know you were moving. I was busy with work stuff, like busy season. So we got a little sidetracked there. But how have you been, dude?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's pretty crazy times we got going on. Nasdaq at pretty much all-time highs. Uh, you know, free money abundant everywhere. Second wave coronavirus. There's just a lot of stuff going on. There's so much, and obviously, I didn't have to tell everyone about the whole of the protest, the George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter, everything. Chaz in Seattle. Like, did you see that finally got shut down this morning? I'm sure you saw.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing about it, and I don't mean to even riff into politics, but okay, numerous people were killed in that zone. And then even last night, it was a 16-year-old black kid and a 14-year-old black kid were both shot by the security forces because they felt threatened by these kids who were, doing what any other 16-year-old kid would be doing in a lawless zone, off-roading in a Jeep. It's like an old 1999 Cherokee, screwing around in the field, and they get shot at, and one dies, and they're just wounded. But that didn't cause them to go. It was the mayor's house being, pretty much run upon by either people of Chaz or basically protesters. I don't know which one, but basically her $7 million house was threatened. So it's just interesting.
Right. The Mark McCloskey meme have been pretty good, but the whole thing, everything's been nuts. But I think the thing to keep in mind with all this stuff is all of it is an accelerant of more money printer go BRRR, more stimulus. It's really just, it seems like the last 6 months have just been a never ending loop of different reasons to try to figure out how to expand credit further and debase the currency and make sure nobody's looking at any of that happening. It's just been one thing after another. And it seems like it wasn't long ago we were watching the stock market collapse in real time, ripping podcasts about it and almost in complete disbelief of watching the corona thing kind of play out in real time. And now it's gone completely 180 the other direction, and it's been magical and frustrating to watch all at the same time. And in that time, Bitcoin's rallied back 100% off the lows, I guess, to, hanging around that 10K range, and everything. It seems like now within the last week, we've kind of been in this just a freeze, like the calm before the storm part 2, almost. I looked back and we recorded an episode and the title was the calm before the storm, and I was thinking about, I'm like, that's kind of where we're at right now. It feels exactly the same. Like everybody is just holding on for dear life to figure out what is going to happen next.
It's interesting times for sure. I mean, I pulled up this chart. I just did S&P 500 over gold, and it's only from 98, but I've seen these floating around Twitter, and when you look at the ratio in 1999 and 2000, it's at 5.5, and you look down at July 2011 where it got down to almost 0.5, which are 0.50 for those listening who can't see the screen, but and right now it's at 1.76, so it's fallen a considerable amount. It's fallen over 65% right now from the all-time highs. It's definitely interesting to think about. If you priced everything, even if you priced everything I feel like in silver, it would still be better. But gold's definitely a better metric. But even if you price things in platinum or other things like palladium, you would actually get a more better reference of what's going on. And I think funny. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you had sent me the tweet from Tur Demistu, who had posted the SPY over gold, basically exactly what you have up here now, and it's really interesting to think about. Everybody have stonks have just gone up, right, repeatedly for the last decade, and historically it's they always go up, right? But are they really going up, or is that inflation? And when you start looking at other assets priced in anything other than the USD in something like a hard asset or some sort of store of value like asset, you start to realize and question like, hey, maybe I'd rather have just been in gold for the last 20 years or 30 years. What's the difference? Maybe there isn't actually growth. It's really just inflation in asset prices. And I know we've been talking about this for the last year, and Jesse Colombo was always talking about it. Calling out the inflation is really just in these asset prices. And it makes so much more sense when you start pricing things in gold or Bitcoin or whatever else, anything else that's more sound money or store of value, like that, it becomes very apparent that the money's just becoming worth less and less over time.
Dude, do you remember when oil went to zero?
Yes, I do remember that.
I've been scrolling around the chart, and it's just like I still can't get over that. I remember we talked about it, but that was only 2 months ago now, a little over 2 months, and I just still can't get over that fact. That day, so many people have never traded oil in their life decided to trade oil, like in that span into the end. Whether they thought oil couldn't go lower and it kept going lower, like it went to zero or went below zero, went to negative 30 something a barrel, 37.
Yeah.
USO has somewhat recovered, not really. 60%. Yeah. It's just incredible, and now it's the Robin Hood meme army is leading the stock market with companies like Hertz.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those times when you have to ask yourself, you have brand new traders on Robinhood and even Cash App probably who are buying stocks of companies that literally just filed for bankruptcy. And I know you and I say this all the time, but it almost can't get more toppish than that. Right?
But then tough.
Again, it's like it doesn't. This is like that. Those don't happen at the beginning of bull markets. Retail getting in, buying bankrupt companies typically doesn't happen at the beginning of bull markets, right? I mean, typically that's going to happen at the end, and that should have been a sign that it's coming crashing down. But I guess I also thought that like 3 months ago, and now here we are. So. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Do we just have to wait and see?
I don't know how much longer this can go, but like I've been fooling around. Like, okay, there's 3-4 month quarters or candles in the year, so I pulled that up. But the 6 month candles just retarded on the Nasdaq. Like in 2000, in January 2000, that candle, it's a giant fucking just cross. It's like the holiest, like the most indecision you could possibly ever have is this candlestick right there. We got this giant fucking green dildo that just rejected going down to 6,700. That's pretty bullish. That means free money's to get. And like it's one of these things like, okay, when I crunch it, like that looks like it can keep going for a while. You know what I mean? Like
and I think that's kind of the point. You don't know how long it can go, and like right.
like when I know people on YouTube will see it, but like when you start with the Nasdaq in like the 80s and just like, oh, it just can't go higher, and then 700,000, and then boom, almost 5,000, like a 10x in a decade basically, and that's for an indice. That's an indice 10xing. That's not individual stocks that are 100xing, 1000xing. Like people.
It's an entire industry.
Yeah, it's the crypto bubble, except just elongated a little more, and just happening for a day. Like think about like probably mid 90, like 5 throughout. Just, and then really into 99, 2000, just day in day out, just nonstop.
Now that you just said that, it was also significantly bigger than the bubble in 2017 because during the dot-com crash, wasn't that like. It hit like $1 trillion market cap.
Oh yeah, it hit well past $1 trillion, and I think that was one of the metrics I was so keyed on with crypto is how many trillions are we going to get to, and we just were shy, at least the coin market cap's number, like 870 billion. But
right, but when you think about it, it's not the same trillion.
Yeah.
So like, it's still small relative to a $1 trillion in 1999 dollars. I mean, I don't know what it is today, but it sure as shit wasn't the same trillion. So like
you and I both know that small. 21
right.
years ago, dude. Like you even think about it, like like it was like a few million 21 years ago, much bigger deal than it is now.
That's my point. So like I think there's the whole space is still so small relative to that, and because I think there's going to be so much overflow because the printer's just going to keep going. Like at this point, full steam ahead, pedal to the metal, like rocket ship meme, everything blast off.
Dude, it's the J Powell printing. I mean,
Yeah, it's gonna, and you always point this out. It leaches into other things too. So some of this stimulus is just gonna bleed off and make its way into the Bitcoin space just because it was given out to you.
wait,
Almost.
look at this. I only look at this because I see it pop up. But Haven Protocol. I don't like shilling shitcoins. I'm not even shilling this. I don't even own this. But this is again just like, this is the typical of crypto, free money land. Like something going up 500% against Bitcoin since June. I mean, and Bitcoin's been probably relatively, I don't know, same level since then. But it's just another funny thing. Like shitcoins still do exist in pumping land.
Oh yeah, and the more and more I think about it, I think that's going to just continue and
just into eternity, like for the rest of our lives. Like if we have grandkids, like this token is still trading somehow. Like if Doge still exists.
Right, but like I don't know. I feel like it's the continuation of that. It's no different than like Theranos, except people thought Theranos was legit. Like
Theranos, like the fucking
yeah,
Elizabeth whatever Holmes.
Yes. To me it's the same thing, and Vitalik is exactly the same. Like it's not a scam until everyone realizes it's a scam, and things will be traded and become valuable, and that company was worth so much before just as that whole thing played out, and you're going to see the same things with shitcoins. I like that I had never heard of Haven before because that fits my narrative that it's never the same alts that come back around the next time.
Excuse me, I've heard of it before because it was pumping like in the end of 2018. If you look, I'll pull up the chart again. I remember it pumping then and being kind of a big deal because it wasn't listed on like a bigger exchange. You know how like tokens started on like just small, like the Cryptopias of the world, but Cryptopia doesn't exist anymore. But so they start off there, and then when they get enough volume, they move to other, dude. TVT to the days of just the sketchiest exchange.
Yeah, dude. Shit was wild in 2017.
Dude, so
I don't
wild.
think people know.
People, and I, like, even before that, it's even more wild, but, like, even when I got in, like, just the amount of, the lack of oversight, rules, and anything, you're just like, email, password, good to go.
Those were the days, honestly. That was my first taste. That was our first taste of like real capitalism, just like open markets doing its thing. And it was, even though it was super scammy, it was fucking awesome.
Well, just because when you think about it, it's kind of like the early internet in the sense that like you're there before a lot of people are, and it's just like there's nobody really, like there's no governing body per se, like some over, like, U.S. or China or Russia, someone very overseeing body looking over this, and no, it's just something that's just existing because no one really cares that's higher up. People don't really care. The Steve Mnuchins of the world aren't really paying attention. Jay Powell's, okay, maybe Jay Powell and Steve Mnuchin care more about Bitcoin now because it's more talked about, but even then, before, like, the reception, I remember in like May of 2017 to the word mentioning Bitcoin, people fucking blew you off.
And you think that's different now, right?
Oh, 100%, dude. Dude, it's a completely different thing, dude. People fucking, again, dude, you and I talk about price drives adoption. I know it's not like we're not at 20K again, but still at 10,000, and it's still like, it became a huge thing, and it's mentioned enough, like, whether it's like regular news, newspapers, obviously now financial news mention it, like CNBC mentions it still quite a bit. I feel like I haven't watched them as much recently, but they still gave it, like, you'd hear it, throughout the day if you listen to it. And Bloomberg, you'll hear it and see it running on the side, note ticker.
Right. No, I think that the narrative of pitching Bitcoin as a store of value has definitely emerged and is being talked about because that is not the same as what is being talked about in 2017. And you're right, it's not being dismissed nearly as much anymore. And I think that makes a ton of sense because, yeah, you're right. It's still hanging at the 10K range after that huge 50% drop during that liquidity kind of crisis. And it's still like putzing around, and people are like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna I'm gonna hedge or I'm gonna take a small position. Did you see Pomp was on Bill Burr's podcast and just pitched him Bitcoin for like an hour and a half?
I did not.
It was
I'll have
it,
to listen. I guess it'll be
it was
interesting.
pretty funny. It was pretty funny, but he's learning about the Federal Reserve. Totally funny listening to him kind of get red pilled. But
Oh man, dude,
it's starting to leach out. You know what I mean?
dude.
And
I feel like you're right. I know you're going with this. Go ahead.
no, it's starting to leach out. It's starting to spread to normies, and I consider Bill Burr retail. Okay, so so
Dude, 100% filters retail.
and I think that is it's awesome because he has such a good reach for like your average person who it would be really awesome if they were just starting saving in Bitcoin or something. Like the average dude who listens to Bill Burr's like, oh yeah, sure, maybe I should buy $25 a week. What's the difference to me? And just you just get things
Bill's a common
started.
man. Bill Burr's a common man.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So
The
I don't
common
know.
folk.
It just feels like the calm before the storm, and like next week's just gonna rip our faces off. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking right
Predictions. Yeah, no, it's the half year mark pretty much. July 2nd right now. It's probably won't be up to the 3rd or the 4th, and no one will listen because everyone will be probably too fucked up this weekend. But it's okay. We'll just talk to ourselves into eternity. But that's fine with me. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting this weekend. I think because everything's shut down again. Pretty much, it feels like the whole country just re-shut down.
Right, and it's a long weekend. It again, it's like the stars are aligning. Right, it's a holiday weekend. What extra days are the markets closed? Is that like Monday?
Well, I think just Friday right now it's closed. The 3rd.
Okay.
At least equities. I don't know about futures for gold and silver. I think futures are still open on Friday, and FX will be open because FX trades whatever. Doesn't care about our stupid holidays nor anyone else's. It's like fuck you, which makes sense because again the fiat market's so important, and then you think about it on the weekends it's closed down.
Dude, it still blows my mind that Bitcoin and the whole crypto space is just trading 24/7, 365.
And think about
that.
you think about the downtime too when we, even across.
Yeah, the stock market's closed more than it's open.
Yeah,
Period.
and people can bitch about there's times that certain things have happened with altcoins, but it's hey, these things stay open 24/7, 365. Equity markets close, for however many hours, 18 hour or not 18, it's probably 16, and then even the futures market gets an hour break,
Right.
So it's hey, these are just fucking people fucking with graphics cards, keeping the network going. It's a pretty interesting thought, okay? And some ASICs, but it's just it's really funny, it's just the times. I haven't looked at the Dow Jones yet. Let's see what's going on. Ooh, but again, there's just so much rejection on this candlestick, But maybe this is, maybe it isn't. We'll see,
Yeah, I just with all everyone seems to be relatively okay with the money printing so far.
Yeah.
No one's sounding the alarm.
If it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not overly concerned right now. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to keep working for a while. That's kind of where I'm at, and it just hasn't changed anything for me because I'm still, you know what I mean? I still I feel like I still need to just sit and wait and watch what's going to happen.
Yeah. Very controversial. What if, hypothetically, we went down to the 2009 lows by the election? Hypothetically, 70% drawdown. Do you think we could handle that? Because think about it, if something like that happens, you know how algorithms work. If we did a 70% drawdown, we'd probably go up 300% in 2 months. You know how this works, dude. People are all the time to buy again was in the shittiest of times in the end of March. You know, when we all thought for sure it was fucking fuck. It was mid-March, end of March. It's fucking fuck.
It's going to zero.
We're going to zero. We're all going to zero. And what do you know? So
here we are. That's the thing.
It's fuck. But I think it's a long ride is what it is. We forget that. Like these things, our daily life, like, each minute, each second, each hour, we're doing shit throughout the day. But these are just fucking candles, and each of these candles is a fucking month. That's a long time.
Yeah, dude, it's a long time. This has been the longest month of my life. Like, by far. It's just been absolutely insane. And, yeah, I don't know. To me, it would make sense. It would make too much sense if, stocks started going down and Bitcoin started going down because everything seems so fucked. That would make the most logical sense. So, why would that happen? Because everything I think that's going to happen, the opposite happens anyway.
Dude, nothing matters anymore. Nothing.
Yeah, and the fact that everything feels so disconnected from reality is just that's when you want to hold cash, right? Because of uncertainty, you accumulate cash as your things get more and more uncertain. And I don't know that things have ever been more uncertain than right now.
Yeah, we saw that. We were talking about that on Twitter, DMing each other about how was it Santiago Fund, A Fund or whatever, posted basically that he's actually 100% right about this. In other countries, if you've ever been outside the U.S., what do people want? U.S. dollars, especially third world countries. Like, I've been to Mexico quite a few times, and fucking dollars go a long way there, man. Tippy bartenders in Mexico, but seriously, people just don't understand. Your dollar goes so fucking far there, and then obviously other Southeast Asia, you name it, and then but other countries, and then Europe, obviously you're gonna be with euros or pounds, but it's really interesting to see how that dynamic, and not that. And then he mentioned how everyone in the U.S. just wants gold or, Bitcoin. It's just funny. And not that other people don't want Bitcoin outside or gold, but it's just funny how that works in third world countries. What they want the most is because their currencies are all so shitty, they just want dollars because that's the easiest thing for them to trade with. It's the most liquid currency, and anyone will accept it.
Yeah, it's so interesting even comparing. It's like, oh, well, why wouldn't you want gold? It's like, well, it's a little annoying to use, to be honest with you. I'd rather use the dollars. It's like, well, why don't you use Bitcoin? It's like, well, same fucking problem.
Dude, if you're in fucking Thailand, the chances that dude having be able to scan a QR code, have the right setup, or if they don't even have fucking internet, dude, and I know you can do it with radio waves, but that's a lot of fucking work, dude.
Yeah, no, it's not that. There's a lot to get done for, my vision of seeing. Yeah, just the infrastructure really needs to be there. Wallets work, mobile wallets work. There's never been a time in human history that more people don't have access to mobile phones and stuff like that. It is certainly possible. It's still not super easy to have a Bitcoin economy, as much as I would like that to be the case. And it's exactly the reason why there's so much demand for dollars, especially as, Brent Johnson was kind of pointing out. People really need dollars, especially if debt is priced in dollars. You need the dollars back to pay down the loans and, so on and so forth. And people in other countries stored their wealth in dollars. So they've kind of separated money into two different things. It's one's a medium of exchange and the other's a store of value. And if you can get your hands on some dollars, you're going to keep those because the local currency keeps losing its purchasing power. So you're going to keep spending that, right? It's like Gresham's law until Gresham's law starts running in reverse when nobody wants the currency anymore. And then you have to switch to another one. And that is starting to happen more and more, right? We've seen it happen in Venezuela. You can see it getting started in Brazil when the store of value function of money separates. It's like the clock just started, right? It's happening, and we're seeing the same exact thing happen in Lebanon now too. Safedine was tweeting out that the Lebanese Lira, I think, lost half of its value in the last 10 days, and it's lost half of its value prior to that also. It's just getting absolutely destroyed. Yeah, I don't know what the ticker would be.
It'll be, oh, well, it's not fucking, it's coming up as some, maybe if...
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to get a chart. But same thing, it's just been central banking shenanigans there, and they've completely just torpedoed the currency. It's worthless now. And it's amazing that people don't think like inflation or hyperinflation can kind of happen to them, and it's happening to a bunch of currencies around the planet right now, and it can certainly happen to ours.
Love to find a good chart, but it's just not happening.
Yeah, like USD to LBP.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find like they're all just
Yeah,
really.
these charts are
I thought they were really
absolute
bad.
trash.
Yeah, I thought there was like I know there's like one where it shows the actual inflation going on. I've seen them before, but I just keep getting these retarded.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just going straight up pretty much. It's going parabolic. It's
Yeah,
losing purchasing power. Is what the chart looks like, but I don't know. I think I've just listened to another podcast and they were talking about for the 2020s they see 1940 style inflation. So like you had the Great Depression in the 30s, and then things were starting to recapitalize, and as that happened, inflation kind of set in. I think specifically like consumer price inflation, and do we finally see the inflation start to flow back in to consumer prices? Because I'm not yet convinced that we wouldn't see asset deflation in the longer term, but I think the real trouble starts when you see the consumer price inflation. So I don't know. What do you think for the next decade? Do you think we're going to see that?
Yeah, they were saying something about like food inflation is like 4% year over year or something right now, which
Yeah.
you don't think is much, but like okay, 4% this year, 4% next year, 4% next year. If you do that 5 years, and then you think about compounding,
Right.
you're
It's a
well
lot.
into 20 something percent. I don't know the exact number, but probably 25 to 30%, if not more. I could be wrong, but
No, yeah, it starts to
it
it creeps
really
up on you pretty
yeah.
fast.
So like what maybe would cost $10. Let's say two hamburger patties cost $10. You're buying from your butcher, like half-pound hamburgers cost $10. Right now in 2020, in 2025 that might cost 50, maybe $13.50 or something, which doesn't seem like much, but over time it adds up. And if for the majority of people their wage inflation doesn't keep up, which is
which it won't,
which
right?
it has been happening for fucking 40 years, then you have issues, and that's what you get. What's going on right now? That's where you get the most ridiculous I mean, you get protests all the time, and there's wealth inequality definitely plays a huge factor in that, and then just the ability with control of fiat money where we are now. I could go on a rant for a long time. I'm going to cut myself off because we've definitely ranted on this topic before. How fiat money has gotten us to where we are, especially now, especially what we've seen in the last 4 weeks. Like society just fucking tearing itself apart. Kind of just makes sense. It just adds up.
Yeah, and what I really hate is that people are not pointing to the root cause of the issue. Like it's the money. It
Yeah.
always has been, and it's become so obvious to me over time, especially when you start framing things in like the Cantillon effect, right, where you can see the wealth and inequality grow just because asset prices continue to be pushed up and pushed up from expansion of the money supply, suppressing interest rates. So you make money pretty cheap, and it's really cheap to borrow, and it just keeps pushing and pushing asset prices higher and higher and higher. And then those asset prices change hands, and rents go up, and other costs and goods go up, and it just gets impossible for the people who are not continuing to outpace inflation, because it's really fucking difficult to outpace inflation, honestly. In my experience, I feel like you need to work, on average I work for like a corporation. Maybe you get 2% every year, but you're really waiting for those promotions every couple of years, maybe 3 years, 5 years, maybe even longer. Sometimes eventually you cap out, where that's where you're hoping to catch up from all the years of getting a 1.5% raise, where you're getting that 10, 15, 25% raise. And that's like barely the majority of the population, right? Like I'm considered fairly lucky for having like a corporate job like that. Not everybody has that kind of a job, and it sucks. If you're going to get a 2% increase on $30,000, you're gonna struggle. It's not going to be fun for you to try to accumulate capital. It sucks.
Yeah, it's gonna be one hell of a time. Also, just look at the square chart, dude.
Yeah, that blows my mind.
Dude, that thing is just went bonkers since that bottom. From 30 fucking like $1 or 32 to 115. And that's from the March bottom. March like 15.
Yeah.
I should have just bought all spot squares. Dude, like look at that. Just one candle downwards, 30%, huge wick downwards, and then just free money ride.
Yeah.
Square is probably the future, according to everyone, for like the next few weeks until it starts to go down.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been thinking a little bit more about Square, just as a company, not looking at the stock right now.
That's just completely disconnected.
Yeah, it's just insane what's happening right now. But I hope that Square survives whatever happens next and crushes it in the future because their product's fucking awesome. I like paying for stuff at a Square reader. I think they're great point of sale systems, and I think Jack obviously knows what he's doing, throwing Bitcoin into Cash App. I can see integration for that in the future somehow, some way. I'm sure he'll figure out what the customers want in terms of adding Bitcoin to Square somehow. I think that fits nicely.
Yeah, no, it has a future. I just know that this whatever its market cap right now does not reflect what it actually produces.
Right, it's insane.
It's not even. I don't even want to know how many times it trades to its earnings. Like
Right,
40 or 50 times right now, dude. It's got to be something
It's
ridiculous.
got to be something ridiculous. Yeah. I can't imagine what it actually is. Especially right now. I mean,
yeah, dude. It went up 10% today, 10.5%. Just fucking absolutely insane.
Yeah, I don't know anymore, dude. Maybe it just is what it is. It's almost like Satoshi take the wheel, right?
Take the wheel.
Satoshi take the wheel. Just, money printer, go BRRRR, print it all. I'm just going to sit back and watch like I have been for the last year and make memes about it because there's nothing you can do at this point except watch and, I don't know, learn a thing or two. Honestly, it's amazing to watch it play out.
Yeah, no, this is incredible. And we get to live it again. I mean, like, it's incredible that we're living all this shit. And, again, I don't know if we'd say history because we're always living through fucking history. History's happening all the time. But this is definitely one of those years where it's like, oh, yeah, we lived through coronavirus and all that fucking nonsense, And we forget, like, the start of the year, what happened, like, with the Iranian general getting fucking, I don't know if it was drone striked or, like, J-damned, but that was a big deal, like, in January. And then the market just kept going and no fucks. And then, obviously, coronavirus became a really hot topic, like for you and I, like only a few weeks into January, like 2 weeks in.
Right.
We're like, oh, what's going on here? And it was like, dude, it took like what? It was like probably 4 to 6 weeks for most people, if not longer. Like it wasn't until like February or March when the general public became to accept it. And then by like end of March, like people just became complete. I don't even like to use the word Nazis. I'll use Soviets, communists about it, complete Marxists about it. They just fucking, it's like, holy shit, and I get it. But at the same time, like, I don't know if you listen to, there's a pretty good podcast, the QTR podcast has that Danielle DiMartino Booth, if I'm saying that correctly, where she mentions, like, that, China's known about coronavirus since September of 2019. Well, if it's been around since September 2019, and, well, majority of us, like you and I, at least 4 months of our life, if not more, we're just fucking floating around, no fucks. And the majority of the population was like 6 months of, the world. So it's like, what really is the effect of this? And like, assuming we tested everyone in the population, how many people have had it so far? So it's definitely 100. Yeah.
Yeah. No, at this point, I think that will continue to be used as an excuse to provide stimulus. And it is what it is. There's nothing. I know you had mentioned this one time we were talking a couple days ago. You knew of some people who had just gotten like all of their stimulus checks and just were sitting on thousands of dollars and didn't know what to do with it. And a lot of people are making a lot more at home than they were working. So
that's also insane.
Eventually that plays back into the economy. It needs to work its way back in. I don't know. I just don't know what to think about it though, because it's happening, and you cannot unsee that almost. Like when somebody gets a gift like that, don't get me wrong, it's horrible that people lost their jobs, like it, maybe even for no reason, right? It's terrible to for that to have happened, but then you see the stimulus come in, and it's hard to get people back to work.
Oh,
And
no,
that has its own set of issues. And I'm thinking from an inflationary standpoint, I think it has its if production slows down and you have less goods, and then all of a sudden you have more money in the economy, I would assume that the prices of some goods and services will start to go up, and hopefully it isn't ones that really piss people off because it's food or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good way to wrap her up here.
Yeah, definitely. This was great catching up, dude. I'm glad everything's going well. This was, I think it was episode 96 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify, and shoot us a DM. Let us know what you want us to talk about, and tell us how you've been surviving quarantine. All right, stay safe out there. And what do you think? Happy 4th of July, right?
Happy 4th of July. Happy Canada Day. Well, Canada Day was, it's still Canada Day your time, but not my time anymore. And I don't know, there's probably a bunch of other days going on right now. There's so many throughout the year. We're always bombarded with them. But peace.
Yeah, peace.